Welcome to The Enthusiast. I am sitting here with one of the best and up-and-coming bourbon makers in the world, Ian Somerhalder. Ian, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it very much. I met you probably a couple years ago, right? And it was with Cigar and Spirits. And I'm gonna be honest, when Randy brought it to me for the cover for Cigar and Spirits back in the day.
You said, what the hell? Why would we do that?
I did. But then I got to meet you and I got to talk to you about Brothers Bond Bourbon. Multiple times, by the way. And I haven't seen someone in the industry that's a public figure that has had the passion that you've had for what you're doing. What the hell made you get into the bourbon business?
Well, first and foremost, anybody listening to this, welcome to what I think is going to become the go-to sought-after podcast to discuss. I just have to say, when we started Brothers Bond, you guys were the first people to take a chance on us. I mean, that was our first cover. Actually, it's the only real cover of a spirits, publication. But that was a huge deal for us, and it was a dream come true. And so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And for anyone listening, this is all about shared passion. Hence the name of your company and podcast, The Enthusiast, and The Enthusiast Report, which, by the way, I still cannot believe you got the trademark on that. I mean,
No, we were very excited when we found it.
You got the IP on that. I grew up in Louisiana, right on the poverty line. And the cool thing about bourbon was, now obviously you can get into nice bourbons, but bourbon, it wasn't about like wine, where there's a big socioeconomic gap between who's drinking really great wine and not really great wine. The thing about bourbon was, and I grew up with this, if you were sitting at a Saints game or a tailgate, you could have the guy who was the CEO of a company, or my old man who was a union electrician, drinking Jim Beam. Same stuff, same great stuff, didn't cost a fortune. It was a level field. And that passion for bourbon is built into the cultural structure of Louisiana, the whole South, really. Yeah. But being a kid from New Orleans, so when we started shooting Vampire Diaries, which I know sounds like a vampire teen soap opera, which it was.
Which is okay.
And I say this humbly, it did ultimately become one of the single most watched television shows in the world. But we drank bourbon on this show. And most of the people watching this podcast definitely are not going to know who we are, because they probably haven't seen the show, or you have a daughter or a cousin or a wife who said to you, oh, I watched the show. But we played Vampire Brothers on this show for 8 seasons. Now that's 13 years ago since we started. And these brothers only drank bourbon. My character drank bourbon morning, noon, and night.
Was there actual bourbon in there?
I wish. Later on in the episode, when the seasons, when we knew we weren't going to get killed, and the whole film industry changed, because of insurance and bonding, and you can't drink on sets anymore.
The crazy part about it, what I've found from knowing you over the last couple of years, and now being able to speak with you, I mean, which is funny. I'll tell a quick story. Is a couple days ago, I think it was over the weekend, I was flying back from Texas. No one knew I was in Texas. And I was trying to
You were in disguise.
I was in disguise. I was trying to keep it that way, that I was in Texas.
You should have seen Lincoln in a blonde wig. It was amazing.
It was. I looked hot. I think I did. But here's the thing. I didn't want anyone to see me. And I get on the plane, and I see 2 seats sitting next to me, a guy that's wearing a Brothers Bond hat. And I go, hey, are you with Brothers Bond? He goes, yeah. And I go, oh, I introduced myself. I go, I'm Lincoln. I'm the founder of Cigar and Spirits. I'm not supposed to be here. So you never saw me. And then he goes, oh, there's someone that's supposed to be sitting next to me, and we had our seats mixed up. However it happened. And then one of your team members goes, oh, Ian's here too, and so is Paul. And goes and grabs you guys. You came back, gave up your seat to come sit back with us and hang out with us, which was a lot of fun, by the way.
Yeah, it was great.
I had a great time. It was a fun flight. But what are the odds, especially that jumbo jet coming from Texas,
huge,
that everyone's in the same thing? So it was very serendipitous, or what is the word I'm looking for?
Serendipitous for sure.
Yeah, serendipitous.
going back to the first conversation that we talked about with Bourbon, sitting on that log for Cigar and Spirits, slap ass in the middle of the pandemic. And I remember I was so disappointed in that cover because styling was all crazy, and there was because we couldn't have a bunch of people around us. It was in the middle of COVID.
It was in the middle of COVID. That's right.
It was right in
the middle of it.
In the bad part. But being able to sit on a plane with you, and how random that was. That was Spencer, our brand.
Spencer.
He puts all the communication together, and he.
Fantastic.
It's not an easy job dealing with Paul and I, but that was so serendipitous because we never get a chance to sit and talk for literally 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
And to anyone listening, when you get to spend this level of time talking about things you're passionate about, cigars, bourbon, whether it's rum, clear spirits, whatever it may be, that is the goal. That's why people are listening right now, because maybe they're taking a second in their car, or just drop the kids off at school, or the ladies out of town. I mean, ladies also want to listen too, but ladies are out of town. It just gives you a moment. It's rare to be able to do this, and so I appreciate you taking the time and including me.
The point I want to get across really to people, we've published over 20,000 pages on cigars, spirits, lifestyle, over a decade, right? So I've had the opportunity to publish over 20,000 pages on this, and I've met so many people that are in the industry, and I've gone to so many tastings, and I've been to every distillery, and I've been to every cigar factory. I've been all the way from the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky all the way to Holland to the Kettle One windmills. And with every different, public figure, celebrity that's been behind a brand, I've only met a few that have showed your passion and actually have gotten into the business. You're no longer just
Thanks, man.
Ian Somerhalder, Vampire Diaries. You are Ian Somerhalder, bourbon maker.
Yeah.
You and Paul. Your team, and you're doing something what I think is amazing, and you're diving in. I mean, when we were talking on the plane, you're on the road, probably even more than you ever were with acting, with this business, because you're understanding the grind of the business.
60 flights in the last 5 months.
That's crazy.
With a 5-year-old at home and a family, and
you're making a product that's, in my book, one of the best bourbons on the market.
Thank you.
And I think I have the credibility to say I've tried every bourbon, most bourbons that are out there, from small batch to big batch to everything else, and it's exciting to see someone that's standing behind the product the way they are. It's not just Ian Somerhalder, Vampire Diaries. It's Ian Somerhalder now, bourbon maker, and I think you're going to do amazing things in the business. And as we talked about, that was exciting to hear.
Thanks for those kind words, man. Listen, it's a dream come true. My wife was just awarded this award when we were flying back from Texas at the Environmental Media Association, and it was incredible. The groups of people there, like Billie Eilish was honored, and
yeah, wow.
But my wife is quite an accomplished designer now. She left the only job, Nikki Reed. She wrote 13 when she was 13, and starred in the Twilight films and Lords of Dogtown, and she youngest independent film Spirit Award winner. Holly Hunter was nominated for an Oscar for a film she wrote when she was 13. But she left the only business she'd ever known, her security, to start to invest in herself and go out on her own. We started this company. I have not been on screen in 3 years. I have left acting to build this company, and because I believe in it. And this isn't a celebrity, there's a lot of celebrity endorsed backed brands out there. I mean, they're flooding the market.
This is not one.
This is everything I do all day long. Yeah. If I'm not with my kid or my wife or sleeping, this is what I'm doing. And I'm doing that while I'm with them too. This takes every single granular cell in your body to make. And the amount of appreciation that we've gotten, and I got to say this in all humility, this is one of the fastest growing bourbons in the country, definitely the fastest ultra premium bourbon in the country. There is no one doing what we're doing right now. And to say that, I say that with humility, but I say that with passion, meaning if you're going to come out with something and you're going to put not only just your name behind it, but your entire life behind it, it better be good. So what is a good? Define good, right? Because this bourbon business, listen, there are a lot of bourbons out there, amazing, incredible bourbons. Is this one perfect? I mean, to us it is, but we blended this 80 proof bourbon for us, right? Like if you were going to come to our home, this is what we would give you. And if you said, hey, respectfully, I don't like it, I would say, hey, I love it. What else can I get you? Yeah. But we blended this 80 proof bourbon every single day in my kitchen for over a year. There was no rush. Let's get some juice, have somebody do it. No. This is not just sourced bourbon. I mean, we're laying bourbon down. We are, we don't do inventory management. I do the inventory. We don't have an inventory management person. Yeah. I go back and forth between Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and work with, there's a very young master blender there, a guy named Sam Schmelter. You're going to hear this guy's name. He has a lot of responsibility over at MGP, Ross and Squibb now. I love that they brought it back to the original name. And it used to be taboo, craft bourbon distillers, quote unquote. They were getting their bourbon from MGP, but they didn't want to say it. Well, this is a place that's been making bourbon since 1857. 1847, but 1857 on the books. Some of the best bourbons in the world are coming out from there. Yeah. I stand in front of it. I'm proud of that. It also, the other great thing about it is, it allows us to scale. So there's no issues there. And so what's cool is being able to go back and forth between Lawrenceburg, look at our inventory management, look at how those hundreds and hundreds of barrels, and figure out where they are in the rick houses, right? And watching them and seeing how they're not performing, but how they're aging, and making sure that those unbelievable notes are present from the time it's a year old and it's white dog. You still taste those elements. And so this is a dream come true, especially for a poor kid from Louisiana. Paul's first generation Polish. This is literally the American dream, And being down in Atlanta, shooting Vampire Diaries for 8 seasons, our characters, and any of you gentlemen watching would know this only because of your daughters or your nieces or your wives saying, oh, I know these guys. It just happens that this show is one of the most viewed shows in the world at this point. But what it did was, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find, and I'm not trying to sell all you ladies and gentlemen on it, but these boys, these characters that we played, bonded on screen over bourbon. Paul and I bonded off screen over bourbon. So if you're looking at what a company is, this was the most authentic thing we could have ever done. But it comes from a shared passion of just loving bourbon. And that's what we tell our salespeople and people out in the field with our distribution partners. At the end of the day, or actually at the beginning of the day, who cares about the celebrity aspect? Just sell it as a great bourbon. One of the things that was amazing about this was it was rated 96 points on an 80 proof bourbon. And Cigar and Spirits gave us that 93 points tasting panel. And then it's winning golds. This cast strength, which is the purest form of our bourbon, is rated at 94 points. Just won gold in New York now 4 weeks ago, which is a big deal. And so this is about balance and about really expressing these grains. And I'm not trying to sound like a bunch of hoopla. We blended that to achieve, and I'm not kidding you, equal sensory proportion. Yeah. Where all of those grains are expressed over your palate, but in total balance and harmony. I'm not trying to sound like kumbaya about it. That's literally what it is. Now,
well, there's kind of a science to it, right? And when you take that extra step for it, you're not just private labeling, you're not doing anything like
science
that.
And nature.
There's a science and nature.
Science and nature.
Yeah.
And passion. And And what you start to realize too is as you're making bourbon, these barrels represent and present such unique profiles. And so we blend 3 grains to get a 4-grain bourbon, right?
Did you think about 15, 20 years ago you can get into bourbon?
15 or 20 years ago, I knew that I would be probably retiring on a vineyard. I always figured I'd...
Like a wine vineyard?
Yeah, Vincent Hanna, our CEO, and a long-term business partner of mine, and we actually had a wine company before we did bourbon.
Really?
And we were selling, he pioneered selling wine to China. And because, Vampire Diaries is so big in China, it's the most viewed non-Asian television show in China. We had a really great deal, and we were selling shipping containers full of wine to China, and it was great wine. And Vincent came.
Where was it made?
So that was the interesting thing. We initially had a really great deal with Treasury Wine Estates, and they were amazing to us. They gave us the keys to the kingdom at Silverado. We had literally the keys to the kingdom, and there's some great wines being made there. And we were blending some really great stuff. And right before we were going to start bottling, our government changed the tariffs, and in retaliation, the Chinese government changed the tariffs on imported wine into China.
So with the wine company, would you say that was a win or a loss?
Well, it was a huge win considering most wine companies don't get multi-million-dollar POs from the largest import companies in the world. And we actually shut it down. And because we knew Paul and I really wanted to do bourbon, and Vincent and I, we loved this wine. So what happened was, so we ended up pulling out of California, which broke our hearts. And we went down to Chile, to Mijahue, Chile, about 2.5 hours outside of Santiago, to blend at Viña Vic, which Alexander Vic is this...
wow, this is phenomenal, by the way.
It's phenomenal, right?
Phenomenal.
And you just came from Cask Strength, which is the...
Which I see the huge... By the way, the cask strain is phenomenal because what's beautiful about this, like the proof on this is it's 115.8. 115.8. So it's a high alcohol content and high proof. So, but the thing what's so beautiful about it doesn't burn. You can have that high to have it not burn is phenomenal. But this is smooth. This is very much...
It's the epitome of just balance and complexity, right? Listen, for anybody listening, you say, wow, how do these vampire guys get into this? We knew we had a massive audience. And I don't mean in a manipulative sense. I mean, we wanted to bring something special to this space. But that audience was primarily Gen Z and millennial females. We wanted to blend a bourbon that, it's not some entry-level bourbon. It's just, we knew we needed an approachability, literally right out of the bottle.
Which, by the way, I think makes it very authentic. I'll tell you why. Because given your demographic and your audience that you had from Vampire Diaries, I believe you could have easily came out with a rosé. Or you could have came out with a seltzer or something along that line.
Right.
Which shows the authenticity for the bourbon. Just if you look at the demos of the different spirits and different industries, right?
Right.
So I believe that shows more authenticity to your commitment to bourbon,
right,
of what you're doing. Because you could have you could have chosen any category, right?
100%. Well, It was about building that immediate approachability.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking immediate, meaning like a Gen Z or millennial or my 70-year-old mom, my 80-year-old dad, even Paul's mom and I have sat on a California mountaintop drinking this out of the bottle. You needed that immediate approachability. You could take this bottle, you can literally take this bottle, pour it into a glass and just drink it like you just did.
Yeah.
But there is a two-prong approach, but it had to have a complexity that even, and I say this as kind of a joke, but like not to be crass, even the snootiest, the bitchiest, bearded bourbon drinker can drink this and say, that is a well-crafted spirit. Yeah. And so you had to have both of those, immediate approachability, but incredible complexity. And that's why we never stopped blending this for over a year in my kitchen. And so thank you for saying that, man. And it also too is amazing. You can go from cask strength, which this was our 70 of our best barrels. We tracked these barrels for 2 years. We knew how they were really improving. We got to move some of them up to a little bit of higher parts of the rick house, kind of finish them off, higher heat, higher humidity. I brought you, they're labeled, they're numbered. We did 14,000 bottles. I brought you this one, bottle number 69. Bottle 69. This was a coveted bottle.
I think we talked too much on the plane.
But this was a bottle coveted, coveted bottle. But the thing about it is, I knew this was the first inaugural episode of this show, and I think this show is going to be a real game changer in this spirit space. And so it was really meaningful. Paul and I were going to drink this in together, but I'm going to drink it with you, man.
I love Paul, by the way.
Yeah,
I got to kind of talk
man.
to him a little bit and meet with him a little bit. You know, he's a very sweet guy.
We have been on this bourbon train,
And together too.
Together, man. We built this Vampire franchise together, and then we built this bourbon together.
You guys ever get tension in the business with
No.
bourbon? No.
No. Paul and I have the same palate for bourbon. You know, Paul likes a joke. You know, he always says I'm glass full, he's glass half empty. So we're this great balance. You know, I get really excited about shit, man.
And Paul's more like the.
He's like, whoa.
Slow down.
Let's look at this for a second. He's cynical in a great way, and I just see like shiny shit everywhere because I look at possibilities behind every single door. You know, I have fun when I'm sitting in traffic. If I have to run errands, I'm having a blast.
You're saying you light a cigar too. If you're in traffic, you light a cigar.
Oh, I just have a blast. I'm going to be listening to your show now. The first podcast or the first Zoom I got to do, this guy named Tim Swyatt set it up. He works as bigwig at Morgan Stanley. I didn't even know, but he loves bourbon and he's a facilitator. He loves getting people together. So the first Zoom we ever did for this company, Paul wasn't on it because he was on a flight back from Europe. It was 25 people, bunch of badass bourbon people, primarily all in Kentucky. Yeah. Jim Rutledge was on that Zoom.
Wow.
You can imagine, this is a brand new company. We hadn't even hit the market yet. And Jim Rutledge, along with Mark Gillespie and a lot of people were on this show with me. On the Zoom. And Jim Rutledge said, and he tasted it, and he had such great words to say. But even Jim Rutledge of Four Roses fame said, if you are in the bourbon business, whether you are distilling, you're blending, you're sourcing, you're making bourbon, you are not competition. You are family.
There's only two industries like that. It's the cigar industry and the spirit industry, and a little bit of the wine. It's the same thing in the cigar industry as well too. I've been in it for years. The same thing with the spirits is everyone is family. Everyone's making things. Everyone needs each other. Everyone works together.
Right. Well, it's like a lot of my buddies who are big restaurateurs, and I'm talking everything from mom and pop. Like we owned my sister, my brother-in-law, and I owned a pizzeria in Sun Valley, Idaho. It's now down in Louisiana. You talk to any restaurateur, I'm talking whether it's Ducasse Group or mom and pop, and they will tell you that 5 restaurants on the block is better than 1 because it's bringing more people, it's bringing more community. We know that this is getting people into the whiskey category. We were never there to dilute the whiskey category. We wanted to build and bring new people into that bourbon category.
Which you're doing.
And that's what Brothers Bond did.
You're bringing new people into it.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen postings all over social media of girls drinking Brothers Bond. I saw a post. They tagged me in it. It was nothing to do with any of my brands or anything. They tagged me in it, and it had Brothers Bond, and it was 4 girls at a bachelorette party, and they were drinking Brothers Bond bourbon.
When's the last time you saw that?
I was like,
man?
What the hell? You don't see them drinking any other bourbon like that. And I was like, you got to.
Thank you, ladies. But when's the last time you saw that? And I think the last quarter century, people have been saying, how do we get women drinking whiskey? And I don't say that as a manipulative thing. I say like, women love this spirit. And a lot of people try Brothers Bond and they go, oh, I didn't even know I liked bourbon. Actually, I don't like bourbon. I like your bourbon. But I'm going to start trying and dabbling now. And I say this not like it's like some soundbite, right? if you think about it biologically, even the greatest enemies of the African savanna still come together around the watering hole. Even the greatest enemies in politics or families or whatever come together around the table. And like what Jim Rutledge was saying is that if you're in the bourbon business, your family, you're not competition, it brings more, you get a seat at the table. And as long as you're there to communicate and share, then there's nothing
Everyone's
better.
in it together.
Everyone's in it together.
What do you think's been the hardest part of this venture? I mean, this is not an easy venture.
It's hard.
I mean, to get in the liquor business, I've been in this for a long time. You need, for the liquor business, you need about 10 to 20 million.
You need tens of millions of dollars.
For the cigar business, you need maybe 5 million to get started.
5 to 7, 4 to 7.
Yeah, 4 to 7, right? What's been the hardest thing? I mean, people have asked me in the past, are you ever going to get in the liquor business? Because we have contacts you can believe, and we're blessed to have them. What has been your biggest challenge in it? I mean, and I believe in this product. That's the thing.
Thank you, brother.
But I mean that genuinely, because we've sat with so many people that are just slapping their name on it.
Yeah.
It's a cash grab, and you're not doing that.
No, there's no cash grab. Actually, Paul and I are
So what's been the hardest part of it?
And I, by the way, I'll take it because our team is amazing. I mean, we're a team of 8.
It's a small team.
It's tiny, and they're getting pretty maxed out. we're really looking forward to the holidays.
But you push them.
Yeah, we push them, and they push themselves, and they push us. Like,
but they believe in it, which is great. When we were on the plane, I got to sit and talk with your team.
They believe in it.
And they believe in it.
Yeah, they believe in it. We were very fortunate, even in California. Our district manager, regional manager in California. Again, this isn't to create bad blood, but we were fortunate to get the #1 salesperson in bourbon in California. I won't say what company she came from. They were not obviously happy about that. Yeah. What are you doing? This is a new brand. It's a bunch of celebrities. It's a flash in the pan. When we believe in it and they believe in it. The hardest thing, go back to your question, the hardest thing about this is, so when we started this company, this has single-handedly been the hardest thing I've ever done. And so to answer your question,
100%.
When we launched this,
I look at you like you're crazy when you're doing it.
We had some problems.
Which I respect, by the way.
No, I appreciate that. Well, we had some problems because we had bourbon coming of age, and we had a deal to get that bourbon out because the other bourbon was too young. This is 4 years. We don't do anything under 4 years, period. End of story. There's no 2-year bourbon here. And which I respect. I mean, there's some amazing 2-year-old bourbons out there. But we had some issues with our first production. And it came down to it where we had an unforeseen issue, and it was a big problem. And to secure getting onto this line and all this stuff, we needed $1 million in cash. I was told this on a Friday, and it had to be deposited on a Monday. And so I raised $1 million in cash over a weekend with no operating agreement.
God bless.
My friends and the people who really and smart business people came together. We raised $1 million in cash on a weekend with no operating agreement and no contracts.
Guys, let me let you in on a little secret of one of my favorite tequilas, Tequila Commissarial. There's no wonder it's been rated at double gold in multiple competitions. In fact, it's been rated at 96 by Enthusiast Report. With hints of buttercream, caramel, and chocolate, there's no wonder it's had so many amazing ratings. Guys, the Enthusiast says Tequila Commissarial is a must-have in your collection.
What is the word that you would describe that for you?
Well, there were some tears for sure.
But
a lot of sleepless nights.
There's a word that describes this.
Well, I would say first and foremost gratitude.
I think the word's tenacity.
Tenacity is a good one. Yeah, I mean, you
Because
got to
I think
perseverance,
you
tenacity.
you came from New Orleans, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Louisiana.
In Louisiana, and you got into acting. The odds of making it in Hollywood in any form, to get on a play in LA or New York and in Broadway, first of all, is tough to do.
Yeah. No, 100%.
To get on a show of the
Smell
stature.
that now. Now that's had a little time to breathe.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Do-
Well, by the way, I got to tell you, I was in this way before I was even in acting. I started working when I was 10. My mom had the foresight to get me in modeling and acting classes, and used when I was 10, and used every dollar we had, and borrowed money from my Aunt Nancy, my dad's sister, to do it.
Once again, that's tenacity.
And it was her foresight and foresight. And I went to a big like a modeling acting convention in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Again, we spent every dollar the family had to do this. And my mom and I worked. You had to do like there was modeling, and then you had to do like write a commercial and do it, perform it on a stage in front of thousands of people in Hilton Head. My mom and I wrote it together.
Was it natural for you?
Yeah, it was totally natural, because I had been doing theater since I was about 6 or 7, and my mom would take me to local theater auditions, and she'd work on me in the car, and we'd be singing and shit. And we went to that convention in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and I won every award there. And so I got a modeling contract to go to New York with Ford Models. Now, this is 1990.
And Ford Models was huge, by the way.
Eileen Ford was still there. This
Huge.
was like Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington. Like this was the apex of fashion in 1990. And I went to New York. My mom would take a sabbatical in the summer, and we would go to New York. For 3 summers we did this. And we would pound the pavement in New York. And this is before an iPhone. You were looking at it from a guide, like, subway maps. And we had go-sees, and we had a little voucher book. And I was working for Gap Kids, Ralph Lauren, Toys R Us, Kids R Us, all that stuff, and doing cool, like working with big art directors and photographers stuff. That was me from 10 to 13, man. Yeah. And so it started way before that. And that came with my mom having that foresight. And then by the time I'd gone home for a year, 2 years or whatever, I was in Louisiana at 13, 14, 15, and started to get that itch again, telling my mom, I don't want to be here like this. I want something more. And so she saved some more money. And for my 16th birthday, on my 16th birthday, December 8th, 1994, I went to another convention in in New Orleans, met all these big New York agents. I was 16 that day. And we get a phone call 5 days later from a big agency in New York, and says, hey, we submitted your Polaroids to this photographer named Stephen Meisel. Now, this is 1994.
I love how you say Polaroids, really aging us, by the way.
Literally Polaroids.
Yeah.
Stephen Meisel at the time, other than Bruce Weber and maybe Richard Avedon and Helmut Newton and a couple of people, Annie Leibovitz, whatever, was the biggest fashion photographer in the world. And this guy booked me in like a 12 or 15 page photo shoot for L'Uomo Vogue, which was men's Vogue.
Yeah. Wow.
So I got on a plane the following day, 6 or 7 days after my 16th birthday, and flew to New York. And that was it. My career took off.
When it comes to Hollywood and acting, or whether it comes to bourbon or whatever, people always see what's on the bottom of it. They don't see what's on the top, right? They don't see how much work it took to get there. I don't think a lot of people understand that.
It took me from 10 to 20 to get my first real acting job.
What advice do you give people as entrepreneurs or as actors or anyone when they're trying to make something of themselves? What advice do you give?
That's an interesting thing, and I've been talking about this a lot lately. People do come up to me all the time, and now we've experienced, there's been a lot of failures, but a pretty fair, decent amount of success with Vampire Diaries, and Lost was another one, but now with this bourbon, because as an entrepreneur, I did fail majorly. I'll go into that later, and it's public knowledge, but it was a big, big, bad wake-up call and a lesson. But people say, how do I start as an entrepreneur? Well, you've got to have two major things. Well, first of all, you've got to have some passion, and you've got to have purpose behind something. So what the hell defines purpose? You know, people, if you think about this for a second, like taking this 10,000-foot view of what our lives can be, or what specific industry we can be in, whatever it may be, there is one freaking word that we are searching for our entire lives. Whether you are 8 years old or 88 years old, that one word is purpose. But how do you find it? Where do you get it? Where the hell does it come from? What's the formula? Is there an equation? Well, guess what, folks? They're not teaching it to you in school.
100%.
You're not learning it on the street. Your boss is never going to tell you this, and neither is your professor, typically. But there is a formula to purpose. And what I've found is you find purpose when you marry skill with passion. You know, when you bring together the things that you are good at with the things you love, you find purpose. And then boom, you know, the whole world opens up to you. That's that passion in every step. It's the shit that gets you out of bed in the morning when it's 5 below zero.
And you can't sleep at night because you're thinking about it all night.
Exactly. Now, it might not make your life easier, but it's going to make it a lot fuller. And so going back to that as an entrepreneur, you've got to have passion, but you've got to have purpose. And the companies of the future that are going to succeed, and by the way, I don't mean just companies of monetary value. I mean the companies of the future are the companies with a triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. End of story. So as an entrepreneur, if you've got that passion and you've got that purpose, you've got to have two more things: story and quality. Because as you know, and you've seen cigar companies and alcohol companies come and go, you've got to have story, you got to have quality. Now, mind you, you can have quality and not a great story, and you might do okay. Or you can have a killer story and not that great of quality and might do well for a little while. It's like a film. You can have the best film in the world. It can be Leo DiCaprio and Meryl Streep and Denzel Washington. And you can have all these amazing actors and actresses in it. I say actors just as as a term. But if no one knows about it, it's not going to go anywhere.
I've always said, if a tree falls in the forest, you know that old saying, if a tree falls in the forest, is anyone around to hear it? And did it fall? My statement is, who gives a fuck? No one heard it fall. So when your tree falls, make sure people hear it.
Absolutely. And you've got to have that thing where people can, because there's a lot of noise out there and people are busy. Why are they going to try your product? Well, it's got a great story. Quality's okay. But when you've got a story and quality together, now you've got something. Now you've got something people can actually get behind and appreciate.
Why?
Does that make sense?
100%. But why should people buy Brothers Bond bourbon against the other bourbons?
Well, a couple of reasons, I'll tell you. One of them is it is uncompromising quality. Whether you don't like 80 proof bourbons, I don't drink anything under 90 or 95 or 100. Totally get that, respect it. I'll tell you what, the level of nuance and quality in this 80 proof bourbon is enough for even the Fred Minnicks of the world or the Nate Gannons of the world to say, hey, I'll finish this and I'll get into that one. I appreciate this as a spirit because of the level of freaking quality. There's a woman, we just came from Texas, so there's a woman down in Texas who's one of the owners of Twin Liquors down in Texas. One of the greatest success stories in the liquor business. Second largest retailer in Texas. David and Margaret Jabor own it. Twin Liquors was two twins. Started this company, I want to say 1937. But Margaret Jabor is all about story and quality, but also family. Twin Liquors. Her daddy and her uncle put this together because they They loved each other. They were family. They did it together. They built it on the, and Margaret Jabor, being a woman coming into this male-dominated business, worked so hard to build community around a liquor store where people come together, right? You say, why would people buy this over our any other bourbon? What we put into that bottle is uncompromising quality. And the idea of this bourbon is to bring people together. That's the ethos of the company. Not to sell $1 billion worth of bourbon. Sure, that's great, whatever. Down the road, maybe we'll do something like that. That's great.
I think you will.
I mean, either way, the vehicle of this company that is about bringing people together and not just giving back to a community. I'm talking about turning and changing the way this business is run by using the 4 things that go into this grain. So as you know, I work in the space of regenerative agriculture. Josh and Rebecca Tickell came into my life 17 years ago now. They are who brought me in to Kiss the Ground. And anybody watching this, if you get a chance, please, whatever you do, even the second you hear this, see a film called Kiss the Ground. It's on Netflix right now. It's an environmental documentary. It is, by and large, the most impactful environmental documentary ever filmed. It's all about regenerative ag. What the hell is regenerative agriculture? People go, what is it? Well, it is the answer to our problems, because regenerative agriculture can literally stop climate change. Wow. Stop it in its tracks. And so every bottle of that you buy is going to helping not just fight climate change. I'm talking about changing the way the grain industry works within the alcohol space. And I am not going to stop until this bourbon company is the truly regenerative spirits company in the world.
Fantastic.
Now, what does that mean? You know, in a couple years, you're going to be able to look at this bottle, you're going to be able to turn it around, and you're going to be able to see how much carbon this one bottle sequestered. And that means something to people. Yeah. So not only does it taste great, but there is something behind this brand that is not just story or, you know, because of the Vampire Diaries. That's really great. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a brand that has 13 years of IP built into it. But the fact that we get to do that at this scale, you know, we did over 100,000 cases year one, 6-pack cases. 9 liter, 100,000 9 liter
I was going to
cases
say
would be.
that.
But and I know the alcohol industry works in 9 liter cases, which is so weird because no one sells 9 liter cases.
It's usually 12.
No, but I'm
I
saying
mean, any
12
other
bottles,
business,
but like these are, you look at everything's a 6-pack case, but we did over 100,000 6-pack cases year one. That tells you something, and this isn't just because the distributor pushed it. We ended up May 1 to May 1, 83% depletion. And we're now up to 85% depletion, meaning that pull through, it's not just someone buys this to put it on a shelf and say, hey, the Vampire guys did this. These are people that go in, buy a bottle, take it home, drink it, come back and buy another bottle. And the data tells us that. And that's what's so special to us, man. Wow. That's what's special, you know? When you look at those numbers, like, I mean, when you look at those numbers, like, it's a little hard to argue.
I've been an entrepreneur for 18 years now. And
yeah, you've had some great successes, man.
I've had a lot of failures, too.
Yeah, we all have.
You know, and I think
Which makes us better businessmen.
1,000%, because
Right?
you don't learn from everything you do right. You learn from everything you do wrong.
Yeah, 100%.
And when you have that time you fail is what actually really teaches you, right? I have this concept that you have to have these 3 things: a hustler, an entrepreneur, and a businessman. Right. Meaning that to be a hustler, right? A lot of, especially today, this new generation, this Gen Y, Gen Z, you have to, everyone wants that quick cash, right? Who doesn't? And then you have an entrepreneur who's like a visionary, right?
Damn.
No, it's fantastic.
So good, man.
And then you have an entrepreneur who's like a visionary.
Right.
And then you have a businessman who's about numbers and calculated everything. That's usually a CEO, right?
Right.
The thing about that is you can't be too much of any of those
one thing.
One thing. If you're a hustler, you're short term, right?
Right.
You're trying to make that quick cash. If you're an entrepreneur, you're a visionary, you're like an artist. You're like, let's just create things and do things. I don't care about the
And then you need
numbers.
a team around you to build the financial component of it.
100%.
Right.
And then you have the businessman who's calculating on numbers, but they don't see the downward 3 to 5 years. So in order to be this well-rounded business person, this well-rounded entrepreneur, this well-rounded hustler, you have to have these 3 aspects, right? And if you don't have that, what's going to end up happening is you're thinking short-term, you're only a visionary, or you're only looking at numbers. Which one do you think you're most of? Honestly, because for me, I started as a hustler. Anything I could do to make a quick buck, I had to.
Yeah.
I was 18 years old. I started with $800 in my pocket, and I was just trying to make a living.
Right.
I didn't come from money. I had nothing. And then I hated the word entrepreneur. I hated that when I was growing up. Because I felt it's like, oh, that's like you don't have a job, right? And then you have the businessman of it, right? Who's calculated, looks at the numbers and says, how do we do this and how do we go long term? But the businessman a lot of times only looks at, okay, did we make money on this? Well, you might have broke even or made money on that, but 2-3 years it's going to make money.
Right.
So for me, I hated that word entrepreneur because I felt like it was just like an unemployed guy he's an artist. He's an artist in Laguna Beach. He's an artist in Hollywood. He's just someone.
Right.
As you know, you go out to Hollywood, they're all artists, right? Everyone's an artist.
Right.
And I hated that term. And then I fell in love with the term later. And I think this generation, they're so stuck on being entrepreneurs and hustlers, but they have to have that business person to understand, you have to, at the end of the day, you have to run a business.
I think you have to fail a little bit to recognize where your strong suits are. And my
humbles
wife,
you.
My wife has actually been the one who's been able to sort of teach me this.
Excuse my French, how the fuck are you balancing it right now?
You know what?
We were talking on the plane, and you're talking about how much you love your wife. You're talking incredible about your family. And every time I talk to you, it's all about your family. But yet you're on the road every fucking day.
Every week, man. Every few days.
Every week, but yet you're doing it for your family.
Oh, 100%. Well, because the idea is I only work, it's like, it's so funny. I spent my formative years in Europe, right? Living as a model between New York, Milan, and Paris primarily. And in Europe, people work to live. In the United States, people live to work. 100%. And I grew up in Southeast Louisiana. And in Southeast Louisiana, you work to live. You work your ass off so that you get time with your family. That's whether it's on the boat, like you guys are on, spending time with your kids, whether it's at the soccer or the football game, or on that boat with your old man or your brother or your friends fishing at, pardon my French, oh fuck 30 in the morning. You know what I mean? Like trying to chase those redfish or the speckled trout.
Which I do not enjoy.
And so, there you go. Well, you get seasick.
My family's from Colorado.
Right. But even Colorado has a bit of that too, where you want to spend time in the outdoors with your family. So, when I think about every single episode of Vampire Diaries that I ever completed, every check I ever got, for me was always, oh, this is going to allow me to do something with my family. This is going to allow me to do X, Y, and Z with my parents or for my parents or with my brother, my niece, and my nephew. That, for me, is that driving passion. And so, to bring it all back together, you find that balance when you fail a little bit and you realize, and my wife will even tell me this. She goes, Ian, you know this. I have terrible time management. I am the visionary because I've spent my life in fashion and the entertainment business. So I see everything at scale. I see craft and quality because I worked with the greatest fashion designers in the world. The Versace's would send me a car to take me to their Via Gesù place on weekends to spend time with my roommate in Milan and our friends, but to bring us to these gatherings and dinners and parties to meet with all the best art directors, all the best photographers, all the other designers they were hanging with. And these people taught me about quality. they taught me how to function in a business, which was
I've noticed, by the way.
story and quality. But as a visionary, meaning, oh my God, we got to do this and that, let's blow the doors off. But you've got to come back down to the ground. All right, so strategically and physically, how do we make this happen? And so what you learn is, as an entrepreneur, particularly when you fail, or having the balls to look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, or look at your team and say, hey, I am not good at these few things. And I will say that to Spencer, you sat down next to, I'll say this to our team, whether it's our CMO, I'll say this to my wife, I'll say this to our CEO, Vincent. I am not good at building out this. I don't have great time management. I'm super all over the place. I live on the road. You guys have to build this around me. I can give you the great ideas and I can get out in front of people, but I can't tell you the road to get there. Now, I can tell you that 2 of the mash bills that I blend for this do really, really, really well on the mid to lower parts of the rick house. And as I taste through them at 2 years old, 2.5 years old, that they may need to move up to floor 5 or floor 7 to get a lot of that heat and humidity. I can tell you how to do that. And so I think as far as being an entrepreneur, to balance it all, you have to know where your strong suits are. And you can't try and do everything. Because when you do that, things start to slip through the cracks and you ultimately fail. And I've failed big time in business to the tune of 8 figures. 8 figures, not 7, 8. 8. I failed enough to where I realized my wife and I sat down, together over a glass of wine, sitting by the fire, to say, hey, here's how we rebuild as a family. Here's how we do this. You focus, Ian, on what you're good at. I'm going to focus on what I'm good at. And my wife is very good at structure, consistency, follow through, because business is about follow through. Yeah. And what I learned was I wasn't great at follow through because I was doing too many things at once. And that's where I see entrepreneurs fail. When you have a great idea, but you don't surround yourself with a team, even if it's a small team, even if you're pulling favors and you can't afford to pay them, you got to surround yourself with team. There is no I in team for a goddamn reason. Team, team, team. And so if you have that story, you have that quality, you got to put a team in place. And that's what was so amazing about Vincent Hanna, our CEO. It's like, I remember even when we were first starting this company, we had this big first meeting, big meeting, like 4 people on the call, 5 people. He said, there is a DNA here in this bottle. And so, and we're big family guys, right? He's got 3 kids and a wife and a big Italian family and French family. He said, anything that comes off of this, meaning an age expression, a blend, whatever, has got to have the same DNA as this, because this is our gold. In the business, people call, the base brand. There's nothing base about this. This is our flagship. This is our baby. And so that same DNA has to come off of this. But what does a family have the same of? DNA. So company-wide for Brothers Bond, even this tiny, tiny team of 8 people, we know that we are all connected through our various skill sets and passion. We are all connected by the exact same DNA. There's no dilution, except 80 proof or cast strength.
Yeah.
And the Rise 95.
You have a rye coming out, right?
The Rise 95. My gosh, man.
I was hoping you had some. I was going to tell you to bring some if you had any.
It just won gold in New York, too.
Do you have any bottles?
I didn't, because what I had of our rye wasn't blended. And I didn't want to show up here. Typically, I walk around, Paul can even tell you this, I walk around with a wooden crate full of bottles. And if I come up with a blend, I will literally pull over on the side of the road, not drink it right then, but I will literally blend it in the back of, I have a big SUV. I will literally get in the back and blend it. Beautiful. That literally, even I'm on home, my way back from the airport. And so that's that passion and that obsession with finding quality. But at the end of the day, if you want to be an entrepreneur, or you want to build a company, or you want to be in the spirits or the cigar business or the publishing business or the fashion business or the food and beverage business, you have to surround yourself with a team who's going to be able to amplify your skill sets. And that's what it comes down to, is amplification. You know, if you go to a concert and you're sitting there and you're watching, Radiohead on stage. By the way, Tom York's one of the most talented vocalists in the world, but you're not going to hear him unless that thing is hooked up to an amplifier, to a speaker.
That's true. That's true.
And that's how you got to have that team around you that's going to amplify and add structure, consistency, and follow through to your vision.
How's that Drew Estate cigar with that
Man,
bourbon?
this thing is amazing.
That was the 10-year. It's been rated tremendously across the board.
It's so, I typically, I cut my teeth on Cuban cigars, even down in Louisiana when I was a kid. And I've always gravitated toward these darker cigars,
The
nice
Maduros,
spice.
yeah.
Well, Romeo y Julieta #2 is my favorite. I love
Yeah.
Bolivars. But also, too, I love an Olla de Monterey. I love that grassy, buttery, quality. But this Drew Estate cigar has got those big elements of a dark cigar, but so balanced. You're not just getting a ton of spice or a ton of grass or a ton of dirt.
Pepper or anything like that.
Yeah, you're getting this balance, and it is absolutely incredible. And you said this is like a $14 to $20 stick?
Yeah, not bad. I think to end this, which by the way, I appreciate everything, Ian.
Thank you,
by
brother.
the way, you owe me sushi
I do owe you sushi.
because we dropped that one sushi.
I convinced Lincoln to get sushi at 11 o'clock at night in the international terminal at LAX. And then I started dropping his sushi and stealing his sushi out of his thing.
Where did all of that sushi go, by the way?
I ate it.
Did
I
you?
ate it. Yeah, I ate even the piece I pulled off the floor. I even ate it. I was hungry.
There's too much rice.
I ate it off the floor.
Oh, shit.
But man, I thank you. You gave us this launch. You and Randy and the Cigar and Spirits team, you gave us that launch. You put us on that page and that cover, and you put us on that pedestal, if you can. So you, my friend, really pushed this for me, and I'm really grateful, man.
Whether you're lying right now, and I'll tell you why. You did this.
Ultra team.
You did this because if your bourbon was shit, or if you were not passionate about what you did, there's no way in the hell.
Yeah.
You know how many people we come in with of celebrities and public figures?
Oh, I saw that picture of you guys with all the bottles and all the people. Everybody wants you to taste everything, all the cigars and all the stuff.
So we didn't do shit.
No, well, you
Brother,
did. I appreciate
you did it. And cheers.
Congratulations to this.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Team Enthusiast. I got to tell you, I mean, I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people. When Lincoln broke down what this podcast was about, this was a meeting of the minds of cigars and spirits.
And lifestyle and luxury.
And lifestyle. And of course, luxury.
Camaraderie.
Builds into that. But lifestyle, when you think of that word lifestyle, I don't just think of like Instagram and like fancy cars. I mean a nuance, a lifestyle that actually makes you feel like you've got something going on. Even when it's the middle of the winter and you're up in, Minnesota and you can't go out and smoke a cigar, you've still got or in Louisiana when it's literally 115 with the heat index, you can't go outside, but you've got this thing, this group of people. Again, it's bringing people together. And at the end of the day, I don't care what you do, whether it's luxury, lifestyle, spirits, cigars, or food and beverage. It's about bringing people together. And you, my friend, are about to build, I think, what's about to become that sort of tent pole mantle of where people go to get an understanding of the best of the best that are coming down the pipeline, whether it is a $12 or $15 stick, or it's something that is that's less than that, or the creme de la creme. That is important, man. And so thank you for highlighting that. Thank you for highlighting our brand and giving us so much love and sharing these stories. And at the end of the day, again, it goes back to people come to people like you and this for information, to feel good about what they're doing, or to find and gather some know-how. And I think the takeaways from this conversation is you're building this. Congratulations to the Enthusiast team and to the Enthusiast Report. But also to anyone listening to this, if you have a passion for something and you know you can do something, invest in yourself. Find that purpose. That passion that meets skill, and start to even write it down. Hey, people say I'm good at this one thing, or in the quiet moments at night when it's just you, know that you're good at this one thing, but you have a passion for it. When you start layering those things down, because to build a business or a relationship or whatever it is, you need a strong foundation, right? So if you're taking those things you're good at, those things you're passionate about, and you start to put them together and they fuse, now you've got a foundation to build anything off of. You can build a skyscraper or a business or a farm or a family, whatever it may be. It's all the same. So congratulations to you, brother.
Cheers.
I
You
love
as
and
well.
appreciate you, man.
Love you too, man.
Episode number 1.
100%. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on The Enthusiast. And this is what we're going to be talking about for years to come. We're going to be talking about people that have gone through trials and tribulations of entrepreneurship, of business. Guys, we thank you so much for joining us. We're going to continue to do this, and we thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Cheers.